This is Jets FM on EOFN. I'm Greg DePalma. He's Jan Levine. Training camp continues for the New York Jets. Not that we could tell because can't really nowadays, video-wise, see any action. But such is life in 2020. Jan, that kind of sucks. But still, this gives us an opportunity to go through the depth chart and take a look at the offense on this week's show, and then we'll take a look at the defense on next week's show.
Yeah, and I think even more interesting is going to be if we have a college football season and how teams are going to evaluate players for which there is no game film from the 2020 season. So that to me presents a bigger problem given the trade our organization just made and the additional pick we got. But clearly that's for something down the road, though. We'll see what happens. I mean, right now, as far as we're aware of, all systems are still currently go on an NFL season, and which will take week by week and day by day and see if we progress and actually can see the product end up on the field, especially since there's no preseason games this year.
Yeah, unless there's a rash of immaturity in the NFL, 4 or 5 teams all at the same time, 10 players per team, 2-star quarterbacks. We're going to have a full season. I don't doubt that at all. College, though, it's a fun story to watch, no question. Everything that's going on today. I'm very proud of what I've witnessed over the last 24 hours from the players, from some of the coaches, including Scott Frost. I couldn't be more proud of their reaction to what was really happening, which was they were getting their season, their livelihood stolen from them for political reasons, and also throw in the fact that even though we're hearing it from the players and coaches' perspective, there are an awful lot of jobs out there. The economy for these programs around the university, everybody that gets employed by college football, it means so much. And I just hope that they come to their senses, and that's why I'm really proud of what I saw from the players and coaches over the last day or two.
We'll see. I understand both sides of the argument, especially in the economic piece of the puzzle, but I understand the concern aspect associated. Look, I mean, my daughter's going up to college, and I do have a mild bit of concern because, as we both know, college students will do what college students will do, and they're not always the most trustworthy at all times or always think in terms of what the ramifications are. So all of that has to be considered in terms of the impact associated with it. And see where we end up in terms of whether or not we have a season, and if we have a season, is it a fall season, is it a spring season?
No. There will be no spring season. That's nonsense. If they cancel the fall, they're not playing in the spring. So, and by the way, you answered the question I would have asked, because if your daughter's going to college, even though you're concerned, as well you should be, your daughter's going to college. So you've made your decision.
As of this moment, yes, she is. We're comfortable in terms of what they're doing.
As well you should be.
Granted, that may change in a week, and honestly, part of that is going to be her decision as well.
Of course.
In terms of how comfortable she feels in terms of being on campus, and if there is a moment that comes where she's not comfortable, then clearly our viewpoint is going to change. But we're relatively comfortable in terms of the protocols that they put in place and the precautions that they put in place. But as we said, all of this is subject to change, and it's a minute-by-minute type of environment that we're dealing with right now.
All right, but NFL, we are looking at about another 4 weeks around there, right?
Yep.
Is that exactly 4 weeks? I think it's exactly 4 weeks, isn't it?
But I think just about 4 weeks, correct.
Okay, and that's a Thursday. We still have a Thursday night game?
I believe we still have a Thursday night game.
All right. So that is going to kick off the season for the Jets. They're going to take on the Buffalo Bills in front of nobody. So that's an advantage for the Jets that they go to Buffalo with no crowd. That's a tough place to play. And also the fact that the Jets don't have to play Buffalo in November or December. That's also a plus.
Correct.
So if they're going to use this to their advantage, this is definitely the year to use it to their advantage.
Well, we thought game 1 at home last year was going to be an advantage, and we all know what happened there. So
no, I'm saying going to Buffalo and winning.
On paper, yes, it's much better being in Buffalo in September than going up there in November and December.
Yeah, and I'll take last year. I'll take a repeat of that because things just unraveled after C.J. Mosley's injury. So there were a lot of factors that came into play. Sam Darnold wasn't 100%, and we
had no kicker.
And the kicking game was a disgrace. So yeah, there were a lot of factors that once that game was over, and then what we found out with Darnold a few days later, it was incredible how the season ended before it began for us fans. We can't imagine there's going to be that kind of repeat again. I know having CJ Mosley opt out, considering he's the biggest star to opt out, especially contractually. I mean, Nate Solder's making a lot of money, but he's over the hill. But you got to try to be positive, and that's what we're going to try to be here as always. And we're going to talk about the offense first, and that includes talking about everybody as much as we can. And we're going to talk about 90% of the players on offense as fast as we can. We're not going to waste our time going over the usual suspects. That's something that we have more than enough time to talk about during the season. So let's start with the offensive line. This is the big makeover. And if all things go according to plan, you would expect Becton will be the starting left tackle, Alex Lewis at left guard, McGovern at center, Van Routen at right guard, and George Fant at right tackle. And then we've got the rookie Cameron Clark will be one of the top subs. So will Adoga. And the battle for the rest of the spots on the offensive line, I'm going to give the edge. Well, Jonathan Harrison, you would believe, will definitely be the backup center. You agree with that?
Yep, I agree with that one. Yep.
Now, I think Josh Andrews is going to get the job. I think Josh Andrews has just as good as a job to make it as Harrison. So I actually think that is your top 9. I don't know if they're going to have a 10. If they do, McDermott has the edge because he has his experience. Murray, the kid from Holy Cross, is definitely only a practice squad guy. Hilbers is a practice squad guy who has a lot of potential from Washington. We'll keep an eye on him, obviously, in the future. Hopefully they found someone there. And then Lundblade is an interesting prospect because the kid is a Heisman. What is he called? They call it the, what did they call it? It's like the Smart Heisman trophy.
Oh yeah.
I forget what it's called. The William Campbell Award.
Well, William Campbell.
Yeah. So he was a finalist. That's how smart that kid is, and he was a first-team Big 12 after walking on at Oklahoma State. And they had some big-time offenses when he was there a few years ago. So I would not rule him out as a top prospect as far as their practice squad is concerned. But what do you think about the top 5? That's definitely the way we want to see it, right?
I think so. I mean, clearly we knew that Brian Winters was a maybe for camp. I mean, they opted. We talked about it already. Decided to cut bait with him early on, freeing up some salary. Doesn't look really like there's any free agents that are out there from an offensive line perspective that it's something that Joe Douglas is going to pursue. So the 5 that you named, and the only question was, when they signed Fant, which side of the equation would he be on, the right or left side? Was Winters going to be a component and a factor? And then once you added Becton, you knew that Becton was going to be on the left side and Fant was going to be on the right side, and McGovern clearly is going to be your center. Lewis is the true failover, quote unquote, and Van Roten they added this offseason also. So all those names, I mean, if you look at it, right, Harrison, Adoga, and Lewis are really the only 3 returning guys from last year.
Yeah, pretty crazy. Again, they're going to, and that's why injuries are so important. I'm glad that at this point in time, it looks like everybody is pretty healthy. And it's important that they get as many reps as possible during camp, that 5 group. And we'll see again about that battle. Keep in mind that, again, the reason I think Josh Andrews is going to make this team, you're talking about, he's got the double whammy when it comes to his edge on the team. Because Josh Andrews played 3 years with the Eagles when Joe Douglas was there. And then he played 2 years with the Colts when Rex Hogan was there. So if anybody has a really good opportunity to make it as a sub, it's Josh Andrews. And again, James Murray is a 4-year starter from Holy Cross. The thing that sticks out from this kid, if he makes the practice squad, is he's played multiple positions, center, left tackle, right guard. He was on the practice squad for the Jets last year. Hilbers is the interesting undrafted rookie because there's a kid that played left tackle and right tackle the last 2 years at a big-time program, one of the best teams, if not the best team the last 2 years combined in the Pac-12. And that's not bad, playing right and left tackle for a program like that. He's a good athlete. So these are the types of things that we'll zero in more on when we find out who makes the practice squad, and then any of these kids wind up making the team, including Lundblade, like I mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is it sounds as if there's options. Um, Clearly, we know Douglas targeted this in the offseason. He also targeted flexibility given the way the contracts were created. So there's nobody really signed from a long-term perspective of a deal they can't get themselves out of. So it gives them flexibility moving forward. So I would hope that it's not a fluid situation, because if it is, then Sam Darnold is in a whole heap of trouble back there. And it's something we talked about, the need to protect Darnold, to maximize his talent and also maximize the weapons that they have. So your hope is that the five you see gets to stick together for a majority of period of time. If that happens, that either means there's injuries or ineffectiveness, and then the line is shuffled, which creates downstream risk, especially when they try to score offensively.
All right, and a little bit more on Lundblade. Keep in mind the Jets picked him up on the practice squad late December, so he's been with the Jets since last year. He was on the Oklahoma State team that Mason Rudolph was the quarterback and Justice Hill was the running back. So again, that was a big time offensive team. He could play center and guard. And McDermott was the 6th-round draft pick for the New England Patriots and didn't play with the Pats. Immediately released before the season began. Bills picked him up. He played with the Bills for 2 years, played in 8 games, and then the Jets picked him up last year. Matter of fact, he was let go by the Bills in October of last year, and the Jets picked him up right after that. And he actually made a couple of starts with the Jets last year when I think it was when what's his name was hurt. The left tackle that's the left tackle that's not here anymore. What's his name?
Oh,
Or the
God.
right tackle. What's his the guy, the former Steeler?
Yeah, I don't remember his
Isn't
name
that
off the top
something?
of
We
my
don't
head.
remember
Sorry.
his name anymore. Isn't that's a shame. And where did he get picked up? Actually, I think where did he go? I saw him get picked up somewhere. I don't know if it was Seattle. It was somewhere. Might have been somewhere out west. But that's a shame that we can't even remember the poor guy's name. All right, so that's the offensive line. Now at wide receiver, we know it's Crowder, Mims, Perryman, Berrios, and Smith, I believe, are pretty surely going to make the team because they have the special
Yep.
teams ability, both of them, the top punt returner, the top kick returner. Again, I have a lot of faith and hope that Vincent Smith can actually start to take that next step now that he's been out of that small school situation for a few years. So if he's going to be a viable pro, somebody that you can count on as a really strong 4 or an eventual 3, this is going to be the year we're going to see that. Then the battle becomes between Josh Malone, Chehu Chesson, and the 2 undrafted rookies, Lawrence Cager, George Campbell, and Jeff Smith, who bounced up and down with the team last year. So do you agree that we have 5 that are set on the team?
That's what I have penciled in as well. And I think we're both kind of high on Vincent Smith to see what the ceiling could be for him.
All right. And as far as it's interesting, if you take a look at Malone and Chesson, they're both 4th-round draft picks from 2017. And they both have good size. So they're about 6'2", 6'3", both of them. And it's interesting that the knock on both of them were short area quickness and need to get stronger at the line of scrimmage. That was a knock on both players. And I think Malone has definitely got the edge over Chesson. The only thing that Chesson has an edge over Malone is special teams. So he can play all phases of special teams. That could be a big reason that if we see that he has been kept on the team, we would believe that would be the indicator. But Josh Malone would probably have the edge. Keep in mind his junior year, which is his last year in Tennessee, he averaged 19.4 yards per reception and had 11 touchdowns. And scouting him at Ourlads, he was a player with long arms, big hands, a track star type downfield speed. So Josh Malone, who's only 24 years old, keep that in mind too. Chesson is 26. That's another reason I give Malone the edge out of those 2 players.
If you're going between those 2, yeah. I mean, the guy I think that we all were happy the Jets got after the draft, and the one I think we both believe has the biggest upside is Lawrence Cager.
Yep.
I mean, that's the guy who we thought if he was healthy, he clearly would have gone in the draft. He probably would have gone in those middle round area. Injuries ended up meaning that he didn't get drafted, and we both thought we were fortunate that the team ended up getting him as a free agent after the draft based upon the upside potential that exists.
Yeah, Cager and Campbell, both big. Now, Cager's a little bit more big bodied at 6'5, 220. Campbell, 6'4, about 185, 190. But Cager led the Hurricanes in 2018 with 6 touchdowns and yards per catch with 17.8. He was a grad transfer, went to Georgia last year. He was their number 1 receiver until he had injuries, did not end the season with the team. As soon as he went out, the Georgia offense sputtered, especially, of course, the passing game. But our lads considers Cager an ascending prospect, so that's another good sign for Lawrence Cager and whether or not he makes the team or definitely a practice squad candidate. George Campbell's interesting. He's got an injury-plagued career, but 3 years at Florida State, didn't do anything. Injuries definitely hurt him. Then transfers to West Virginia to end his career, explodes with a 24.7 per catch average with 7 touchdowns for West Virginia. He was clocked in his pro day at 4.35. So Campbell has a lot of speed, good size, probably has to put on a little weight, but another intriguing prospect who you would again think maybe Cager could slip on and make the team. Campbell, probably more of a practice squad guy.
Initially, in terms of looking when camp starts, that would seem to be the pecking order between the two of them, the likely location between both of them. But as you said, the Jets have 2 other guys. This is an area where I think we differ in terms of the left level of talent that exists at wide receiver. I think it's still an area of material need. So I think anybody who could be potentially productive or provide opportunities in terms of them for getting on the field, I think the Jets may go for. But I do think Cager, in terms of athleticism, in terms of talent wise, may have the edge on the 4 guys that are battling for a roster spot.
All right, at tight end, we know that Christopher Herndon just has to stay healthy. That's all that's about, and we have high hopes that that's going to be a big part of the Jets' offense this year, something they did not have last year. Ryan Griffin's on the pup, but I would think because he had the surgery in pretty much the last week of December that his timeline was 6 months. So I have to believe the pup is just a precautionary thing. Yep. So I think he'll be ready to go when the season begins. So the battle will be whether or not they're going to keep, because we have to kind of move Wesco into that tight end, fullback, H-back kind of role. You would think Wesco makes the team. Daniel Brown is on that non-injured list. Daniel Brown's going to have to stave off also Travis Ross. Now, Ross is interesting because you're talking about another Colt player who was there when Rex Hogan was there, and he never played college football. So Travis Ross is a 6'6" kid who started 98 games for Penn State's basketball team, went undrafted in 2015. Colts claimed him in 2017. He had the ACL in the preseason in 2018. And then he was released, re-signed, waived. 24 NFL games between the Chiefs and the Colts, only 14 receptions. But this is his second year after the ACL injury. And again, he does have Rex Hogan, who will believe in him, which is why he's on this team. So we'll keep an eye on him. Those basketball players are pretty intriguing, and Daniel Brown was nothing special anyway.
No, but I think Brown's another one of those guys that could be a blocking back, right? So I do think coming into camp, he has the edge, as you said, because Wesco, we saw signs of last year, not as much as we would have liked based upon we thought what we might get out of him last year. But you stick him in that H-back role, and we've seen what he can do blocking-wise. So I do think that he clearly has a role on this team with Brown. As you said, it's going to depend on if Ross can show anything in camp, especially since he's got the backing of Hogan. But I think if you can get something between one of those 2 guys, it provides you depth, especially we've seen Herndon has injury woes in the past. We know that Griffin is obviously battling back from an injury, so you need to have some kind of depth back there, especially from a blocking perspective, if you're going to use Wesco as an H-back.
All right, now let's go to the quarterback position, and we have Sam Darnold. Now, the question with the quarterback situation after Darnold is going to be what they're going to do with Joe Flacco, because he's on the pup. And if you're on the pup when the regular season begins, you cannot play the first 6 games of the season. Yet, the timeline for Flacco is the first few weeks of September. So it's a kind of catchy situation. Now, it's possible they hold a roster spot available for him, and he just doesn't suit up. They keep maybe fails for a few weeks just in case. I can't see Morgan going anywhere. They don't spend a fourth-round draft pick on a quarterback with no preseason and then just ditch him or put him on the practice squad. So Morgan's going to make the team unless for some reason he's in camp and looks like a disaster. And then, like I said, the big decision is what to do with Flacco and the pup. David Fales has been in Gase's system for a few years. I was actually a David Fales fan in college. I fell in love with him in that San Jose State Fresno State battle with Derek Carr. He beat Carr 62-52 in a shootout. Threw for over 500 yards and 6 touchdowns. So that caught my eye at David Fales as one of these sleepers, but he hasn't really had a chance. When he has, he just kind of looks like a number 2, number 3 in the NFL. But it still wouldn't surprise me if he started the season with the team until Flacco was 100% ready to go.
Yeah, I think with Flacco, so if it's a week or two, I think they keep a spot open. If they think it's going to be closer to 4, then I could see him ending up on the PUP list, mainly because you need to cover yourself, because 4 weeks could easily be 5 or 6, depending on how he's progressing from the injury, right? So if the training staff says, look, week or 2, timeline is accurate, no question, he's going to make the team. And then the question becomes, is Morgan your number 3, and do you get rid of Fales? Or do you go with the 4 like they've done in the past, or have one on the practice squad? I don't think it's going to be Morgan, because you don't want to take the chance of losing him. But on the flip side, if Flacco is going to be out, then we know they clearly carry the 3, and then Fales is likely the odd man out once Flacco is ready to go.
Yeah, you would think that Fales is probably just the, okay, if things don't work out with Flacco, because if they really trusted Fales to be a number 2, then Flacco wouldn't be here. So,
yep. Agreed. I think Fales is a fallback option, especially since they grabbed Morgan in the 4th round.
All right. And of course, Mike White is also on the team. He won't make that at all unless there are some injuries. Okay. Now, the running back position will wrap it up. And we have Le'Veon Bell, who you would have to think, I think, what is he only count $4 million with the cap dead money next year. So this is a huge year for Le'Veon Bell with the New York Jets, and the Jets need to see the stats obviously are very important, but more than anything, they have to see that Le'Veon Bell, the second year after being out for a season, can be, because he's still young enough, can still be that superstar running back. He has to play like a top 5 running back to justify paying him, continuing to pay him. And I expect Le'Veon Bell to have a really good year. Obviously, the offensive line has got to be intact and play better. Sam Darnold has to stay healthy, and the passing game has to open up the running game. And if it does that, then I expect Le'Veon Bell to have a big year. You have Frank Gore, pretty much a leadership guy. It'll be interesting to see how much they start trusting Perine, the rookie 4th rounder. And then the 2 guys that are the guys who are battling it out for maybe one more spot. I don't know if there will be a 4th spot at running back on the roster, but if there is, it's going to be between Josh Adams and Kenneth Dixon. And I got to tell you that Dixon's another guy that I really thought would be a big-time sleeper when he came out several years ago. Matter of fact, his coach at the time, Harbaugh at Baltimore, at the combine that year about Kenneth Dixon, said he could be one of the top running backs in the NFL. That's how highly he thought about Smith. And why not? I mean, Dixon, why not? Dixon, 2nd NCAA history career total touchdown mark of 87. He had a school record 4,480 yards rushing for Louisiana Tech. 72 rushing touchdowns in 47 games. He caught 88 passes and 15 receiving touchdowns, but he had a knee injury, so he missed 2017. He was suspended 4 games for PEDs, and he's had some other injury concerns. That's the reason why he's here with the Jets. And somebody's got to eventually take a chance on him, one more chance. So he definitely, in my mind, has the edge over Josh Adams, but he's got to stay healthy and definitely prove that he's worth a roster spot.
I had penciled in Dixon originally. I mean, Adams, I think, has some history with the organization as well in terms of some of the front office staff. So it's going to be, look, on paper, I would say Dixon. I do think they go with a 4th running back, just because you don't know how quickly Perine's going to catch on to the system, how well he's going to adapt. You want a guy who's able to step in if need be. Clearly, look, Gore is the number 2. Gore is going to be a leadership guy. Perine's going to be probably one of those 3rd down, 2nd, 3rd down kind of backs. Mix them in if you're going to move. We talked last year about the flexibility, right? When they had when they had Montgomery and other guys, of putting Bell out wide. And, having Gore allows you to put Bell out wide periodically and maximize his talents and put him in different positions to succeed. Perine may also be the type of guy you could do that with by putting Bell out wide. So I do think you need a fourth running back just in case of, God forbid, injury, but also to provide some depth in terms of the offensive backfield to give you more weapons.
Yeah, Adams. I liked Adams when he was with Notre Dame. He had some really big years. He had a junior year where he had 1,400 yards rushing with 9 touchdowns. He's a tall, long, well-built back. He's had some opportunities with the Eagles, but I don't know. He's definitely more of a guy that his best. I think if you're taking a look at his ceiling in the NFL, it's a number 2. It's a complimentary 2 on first and second down. Dixon has way more upside. The problem with Dixon is he's not a big special teams guy. That's going to be the problem where the Jets are going to have to decide whether or not they need an additional special teams player or not. And keep in mind also, Adams will only be 24 in October. So that helps. What I really like in closing is that there are a lot of good young players on this offense now. Decorated players from college. Even the guys like Dixon and Adams, who may not make this team, had decorated college careers. So I really like the talent that Joe Douglas has put on this Jet team depth-wise, because you never know. I mean, there's always, you would hope a winning franchise is always, at least every year, is going to find a 6th or 7th round player that is going to be an eventual either starter or key contributor. And they will also find 1 or 2 undrafted rookie free agents that will make the team and will be contributors down the road. That's why Joe Douglas is here. And that's why when we talk about players like this, we have to give him the benefit of the doubt and think that, yeah, you know what, if they wind up making the team or at least the practice squad, then we're going to have to keep an eye on them.
To me, the interesting is I'm going to be looking at one thing in terms of battles. There's nothing to do specifically with the Jets. So I'm curious to see what happens between Lawrence Cager and the guy who I really wanted the Jets to take in the 7th round when they made the trade to Indianapolis for the defensive back is KJ Hill from San Diego. To me, that's going to be kind of curious for me to see who ends up making their respective rosters and the type of impact that they have. KJ Hill
from San Diego.
The Chargers draft.
Oh, the Chargers draft. Was that kid from Ohio State?
Yeah, that's the kid I really wanted in the 7th round. The Jets traded the pick there to get another defensive back from Indianapolis to augment who they had already. And granted, you kind of figure Cager, who they signed as a free agent out of after the draft, almost fills that role to a certain extent.
Sure.
So to me, that's one of those kind of interesting sub kind of plots that really don't have a material impact, but could be an interesting thing to follow in terms of which one of those guys has a potential impact. Because we talked about, I really wanted a guy like Hill because I thought he was a good possession receiver. Cager projects to maybe be a bit more down the road if he can make the team, but it's going to be one of those interesting things for me to watch given the construction of the team so far.
And next week, we will talk, obviously, about Quincy Wilson, the secondary, a lot of new faces. We have several former Indianapolis Colts, Rex Hogan guys. So we'll talk about those players, the linebacking unit, some of the new faces all over, just like on the offense, some of the draft picks, the rookie free agents, and so forth. We'll get into special teams as well next week. And by the way, the last thing I will say is by the end of this season, I hope Perine has more touches than Frank Gore. I think that would tell me that Perine was a good draft pick. If you take him in the 4th round, he's a younger guy. He's obviously more explosive. It's sort of like what happened last year with the Bills. Gore got off to a good start. He faded. The rookie took over. The younger backs took over. So I hope that Perine starts getting more touches mid-season and can really become, a more bigger part of the offense later in the season. The only thing, though, that might interrupt that is if Le'Veon Bell becomes a workhorse and gets like 80, 90% of the touches. And if that happens, then you would think that Gase would be a little bit more comfortable with someone like Gore.
Plus also where they are in terms of the standings, right? If something happens and they're contending, right, then you're probably going to go with the more veteran back. But last year with Buffalo, we kind of knew Devin Singletary was clearly going to be the future there. The only question was when that future was going to arrive, and they started scaling back Gore as he tired towards the latter part of the season. In this case, as you said, if Bell turns out to be, pardon the pun, the bell cow back, and he's seeing 85% of the snaps, then you're probably going to go with the veteran, unless, of course, you find out that your team is nowhere near a playoff spot, and you want to start incorporating Perine into the attack to get him some experience for the following season, and then you'll kind of see a shift away from Gore to Perine.
Yeah, and keep in mind too, I think I mentioned this before, Gore, the last several years, his yards per carry have been really low. He's not a game breaker. He's somebody that even the last few years, he's like a high 3, 4.0 yards per carry kind of guy. But look, it's up to Perine. Hopefully, that's why I want. It's not about Gore. I'm not knocking Gore. I'm hoping the draft pick warrants it that Perine takes the ball away from Gore. That's what I want to see.
They got a 4th-round pick for him and a 4th-round pick for James Morgan, who we're all both hoping that Morgan doesn't even see the field this year. So
no.
You want to get something out of the guys.
That's one 4th-rounder we do not want to see the field.
Right. So at that area, you need to get production. So to me, that's going to be kind of interesting to see what happens with both of those guys.
All right, Jan, good job as always. We'll talk to you again next Tuesday when we take a look at the defense, and then we start getting closer to the end of the month. Can't wait. And who knows? Maybe next week. You would think next week. Here's my guess with college football, and I don't even know if has there been any news breaking news alerts that have popped out over the last several hours?
Again, I think the Pac-12 seemed to be opting out as well.
No, but actual definite, this is what we're doing. Nothing like that yet.
Nothing like that is broken yet.
My guess is going to be that I'm going to guess that they are going to say we are going to delay the start of the season for at least a couple of weeks. And we'll let you know as this progresses over the next week or two whether we cancel the season or start a little bit later. I think that this outcry has just been too much. I'd be really surprised if they just said, well, too bad, we're ending the season. I could see the Pac-12 doing it because we know what they're doing over there in California. They couldn't care less about anything in California except who's going to be the president in November. So I think Pac-12 kids, I feel sorry for them. But Big Ten on shaky ground, no question.
Well, it would be nice to, in general, my comment is it'd be nice if the NCAA had an effective leader, which we know they don't.
Nope. And again, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe this will allow these top programs, the FBS teams, to form their own coalition so we can start a playoff system and rid ourselves of the NCAA, which I have no problem with. So, Jan, appreciate it. We'll talk to you again next Tuesday.
Sounds good.